This is the 5-minute guide to the Helgoland class of the Imperial German Navy. The Helgoland class was the second class of German dreadnought battleships and comprised 4 ships: Helgoland, Oldenburg, Ostfriesland, and Thuringen. Compared to the significantly flawed Nassau class which we have covered previously, these ships represented a significant improvement. Although they retained the inefficient hexagonal layout and the mixed secondary and tertiary battery of the previous class, they had a larger main battery of 12-inch guns and improved engines, although these were still triple expansion engines instead of steam turbines. But the German Navy was not the only major navy to hold on to this older technology longer than the Royal Navy. They were also longer than the Nassaus with a greater displacement, which meant they were able to break 20 knots, and were a lot more stable, and could turn better without losing much speed. The ship's main battery consisted of 12 guns and 6 twin turrets with an 8-gun broadside. Unlike the previous 11-inch guns of the Nassau class, these could actually be loaded at normal elevations, although their initial maximum elevation of 13.5 degrees gave them a short range, which was corrected by later modification to allow 16-degree elevation. Expanded magazines also meant they carried a useful, if somewhat small, load of shells. The ship's secondary armament consisted of 14 5.9-inch casemate-mounted guns and 14 3.5-inch guns, also in casemates, although by 1917 these smaller guns had been removed and a light anti-aircraft battery fitted. 6 torpedo tubes laid out in roughly the same way as the turrets completed the ship's armament. The 12-inch thick main armor belt compared favorably with contemporary designs being thicker than most immediate rivals. The deck armor was fairly average at between 2.2 and 3.1 inches thick. The ships were laid down in late 1908 and early 1909, and were commissioned in 1911 and 1912. They served together as the 1st Division of the 1st Battle Squadron in the High Seas Fleet, and took part in a number of actions. Firstly, they were part of the main battle force supporting the German battle cruisers in their raids on Scarborough, Hartlepool, and Whitby. Although at one point they were within 12 miles of the British 2nd Battle Squadron, the admiral in charge believed he was facing the screening formation of the Grand Fleet and ordered a withdrawal. In fact, he was facing just 6 British battleships with the entire High Seas Fleet, a chance that was exactly what the Germans had been trying to engineer and would never get again. Another attempt to pull off the trick more successfully resulted in the Battle of Dogger Bank, but no engagement of Grand Fleet squadrons. In August 1915, the ships joined other German units in the Baltic for operations to try and force the Russians out. The 4 Helgolands were not committed to the actual battle, but were stationed outside the Gulf in order to prevent Russian reinforcement from entering the area. In 1916, the ships all took part in the Battle of Jutland, where they formed part of the center of a battle line, ahead of the pre-dreadnoughts, but behind the more advanced German dreadnoughts. Their first action was against the HMS Warspite, which was circling due to a jammed rudder, but due to a turn the fleet was executing, they only fired on the ship for a few minutes before losing sight of it. For most of the battle they avoided damage, but during the final emergency turn away from the Grand Fleet, Helgoland was struck by a 15-inch shell which tore a 20-foot hole in the hull. Approximately 80 tons of water entered the ship. At around midnight, the Helgoland and Nassau class ships in the center of the German line came into contact with the British 4th Destroyer Flotilla. The chaotic battle included the incident between the Nassau and Spitfire we covered in the Nassau video. Although the 4th Flotilla broke off the action temporarily to regroup, they unwittingly stumbled into the German dreadnoughts a second time an hour later. Oldenburg and Helgoland opened fire on the 2 leading British destroyers, but a British shell destroyed Oldenburg's forward searchlight. Fragments from the explosion wounded the ship's captain and killed the second-in-command along with a number of other men on the bridge, including the helmsman. Oldenburg was therefore temporarily without anyone to steer the ship, and she was in danger of ramming either the ship to her rear or to her front. Captain Hopfner, despite his injuries, took the helm and brought the ship back into line. Shortly after this, Thuringen and Nassau encountered the British armored cruiser Black Prince. Thuringen opened fire and landed a total of 27 heavy caliber shells and 24 rounds from her secondary battery. Nassau and Ostfriesland joined in afterward, followed by Friedrich der Grosse. After several minor detonations, the Black Prince disappeared in one tremendous explosion. Following the return to German waters, Helgoland and Thuringen, along with Nassau, Posen, and Westphalen, took up defensive positions for the night. Apart from the hit to Helgoland by a single 15-inch shell, the Oldenburg was hit by a shell from a secondary battery that killed 8 and wounded 14 men. Ostfriesland and Thuringen escaped the battle unscathed, although on the return to German waters, Ostfriesland struck a mine and had to be repaired in. The ships saw no further significant action during the war and were ceded to the Allies under the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. Helgoland was taken by the British and was scrapped in 1921. Oldenburg was surrendered to the Japanese, but they did not take possession of the ship. Instead, they sold the vessel to a British salvage firm that scrapped in 1921. Thuringen was taken by France and was used as a target until she was beached in 1923. She was broken up there, but a large portion of the hull remains offshore. Ostfriesland was ceded to the US Navy and was later used as a stationary target during General Billy Mitchell's bombing display in July 1921. The ship sank at 12:40 after sustaining several bomb hits and near misses, and this was used to try and advocate for the use of air power over the funding of more warships. However, the test was very unfair and could even be called rigged. The ship would likely have avoided the hits it sustained had she been underway, and if she had been hit, damage control teams would have kept the ship afloat. Ultimately, all the test really proved was that if you left all the bulkheads open, shut down all the engines, and took away all the crew, you could eventually bomb a ship into submission over the course of several hours. In reality, it would take until the late 1930s for air power to represent a serious threat to an operational battleship. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or a favorite ship you would like to see reviewed, let us know below.